Constitution?
Ready na, Tito Jim. Ang una kong gustong malaman.
Ay kung paano nagsimula lahat ito, di ba? But first, tell me what you already know.
Di po pa nagsimula yon nung nagpatawag ng election si former President Marcos, tapos nagkaroon ng dayaan?
Well, yes in a way. But to really understand the story of EDSA, you have to go back 14 years to the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in our history.
Kailan po yon, Tito?
Halika, maupo tayo. I'll tell you all about it.
And clearance was granted.
September 23, 1972. Lumabas si dating Pangulong Marcos sa TV at gumawa ng isang kagimbal-gimbal na pahayag.
I have proclaimed martial law in accordance with the powers vested in the President by the Constitution of the Philippines.
Ayon kay Marcos, martial law ang tanging sagot sa lumalalang kaguluhan noon sa lipunan at sa korupsyon sa gobyerno. Marami ang ipinagbawal, lalong-lalo na ang pagkilos, pagsasalita at pagsusulat laban kay Marcos sa kanyang pamilya at sa pamahalaan. And during the first few months of martial law, especially for the guys, would you believe? Bawal ang long hair.
Grabe naman yon. Ang narinig ko pa sa parents ko, may curfew daw po kayo nun?
That's right. Kitang-kita mo, hawak talaga ni Marcos sa leeg ang bawat Pilipino.
Paano po niya nagawa yun?
Unang-una, because of his martial law powers, nakuha niyang imanipula yung saligang batas upang mapahaba pang lalo ang kanyang termino bilang Pangulo, kahit na 7 taon na siyang nakaupo sa pwesto. Ayon din sa bagong 1973 Constitution na naratify sa isang pekeng plebisito, pwedeng gumawa si Marcos ng anumang batas kahit pa may kongreso. Sinigurado rin ni Marcos na kontrolado niya ang media at mahahalagang sektor ng ekonomiya. Pinahawakan niya ang mga ito sa kanyang malalapit na kaibigan at kamag-anak. Isa na rito si unang ginang Imelda Marcos na pumangalawa lamang kay Marcos sa kapangyarihan. Pero higit sa lahat, tiniyak ni Marcos na hawak niya ang militar. Ipinamahala niya ito sa mga opisyal lamang na inaakala niyang lubos ang katapatan sa kanya. Naghasik ng takot ang militar sa puso ng mga pangkaraniwang Pilipino. Naging brutal ito, lalong-lalo na sa mga naglakas loob na kalabanin ng rehimeng Marcos. Marami sa mga ito ang ikinulong, tinorture, o di kaya'y basta na lamang pinatay.
And Ninoy Aquino? He was also killed by the Marcos regime, right, Tito Jim?
Yun ang naging matinding paniniwala ng marami. And it was his murder that hastened the events that led to the EDSA Revolution. 8 taon ikinulong si dating Senador Benigno Aquino Jr. at 3 taon siyang namalagis sa Estados Unidos pagkatapos ng isang heart bypass surgery doon. On August 21, 1983, umuwi siya rito sa Pilipinas. Nabalitaan niya kasi na si Marcos ay matagal nang may sakit at kinailangang sumailalim sa isang maselang kidney operation. Inakala ni Ninoy na maaari siyang maging alternatibo kay Marcos kung sakaling mamatay ito. Dahil matagal nang malupit na kalaban ni Marcos si Ninoy sa politika, malaki ang pangamba ng maraming tao, pati si Ninoy mismo, na napakadelikado ng kanyang ginawang pagbabalik.
You had to be very ready with your hand camera because this action can become very fast. In a matter of 3-4 minutes, it could be all over, you know. And I may not be able to talk to you again after this.
At di nga nagtagal, makaraang lumapag ang eroplanong kanyang sinasakyan. Noong ideklara ang martial law, nanahimik na lamang ang mga ordinaryong Pilipino. Pero nang patayin si Ninoy, nag-react agad sila. Sa sumunod na mga araw, ang binansagang natutulog at takot na Pinoy ay parang isang higante na biglang bumalikwas mula sa masarap at matagal na pagkakahimbing. Walang takot nitong inilabas ang kanyang galit sa rehimeng Marcos. Sa libing ni Ninoy, tinatayang 2 milyong Pilipino ang lumabas sa kani-kanilang mga tahanan at opisina upang makiramay. Doon, pinakita ng mga Pilipino ang unang senyales ng people power.
Teka po, Tito. Paano po ito nalaman ng mga Pilipino sa iba't ibang parte ng bansa? Di po ba kontrolado ni Marcos yung media?
Well, ipinalabas ng media na kontrolado ni Marcos. Nakakaunti lang ang nag-attend sa funeral ni Ninoy. Pero may isang maliit na magazine na naglakas loob na i-report ang mga tunay na pangyayari. Ito yung Mr. and Miss. At masasabing ito ang nagpasimula sa paglaganap ng tinatawag na mosquito press sa mga panahong yun. Sa radyo naman, you had Radio Veritas na pag-aari ng simbahang Katoliko.
At dito na rin nag-umpisa ang sunod-sunod na mga rally at kilos protesta laban kay Marcos, right?
Tama. Biglang lumitaw at kumalat na parang apoy sa tuyong kahoy ang anti-Marcos sentiment sa lahat ng sektor ng lipunan, especially the middle class. And, take note, Bianca, malaking bahagi nito ay ang kababaihan. Sila ang nagpasimula ng masigla at masayang pagpoprotesta na muli nating makikita sa EDSA. Pati mga artists tulad naming Apo, from stage, movies, and television, ay nagsilahok sa mga pagkilos na ito. Naging sentro ng mga anti-Marcos rally na ito ang Ayala Avenue sa Makati. Doon naging pangkaraniwan ng malakas na pag-ulan ng yellow confetti. At dito na nabahala ang Estados Unidos.
At ano namang kinalaman ng US sa mga pangyayaring ito?
Dapat nating tandaan na may dalawang malaking base militar noon ang mga Amerikano dito. Marami rin silang business interest. Sa pananaw ng US, pag humina ang gobyernong Marcos, maaring magtagumpay ang mga komunista. At yun ang ayaw nila.
Pero hawak pa rin naman ni Marcos ang buong militar, di po ba?
Yun ang akala ni Marcos. Di niya alam na ayaw na sa kanya, di lamang ng mga demonstrador, kundi pati na rin ng ilang miyembro ng armed forces.
Paano nangyari yon, Tito Jim? Hindi ba malapit at tapat yung mga opisyal ng militar kay Marcos?
Hindi lahat. You must remember that for some people, loyalty has limits. So ganitong nangyari. Marcos actually discovered he was sick with a very rare disease sometime in the late 70s.
Oh, kaya po siguro siya naging paranoid sa mga taong nakapaligid sa kanya. Lalong-lalo na yung mga nasa militar?
That's right. Kaya naman in 1981, inappoint niya bilang Armed Forces Chief of Staff ang isa niyang kamag-anak na lubos niyang pinagkakatiwalaan na dati niya rin driver at bodyguard na si General Fabian Ver. Binigyan ito ni Marcos ng malawak na kapangyarihan. Bagay na ikinasama naman ng loob ng dalawang mataas na opisyal ng militar, sina Defense Minister Juan Ponce Enrile na matagal nang kaalyado ni Marcos at si General Fidel V. Ramos, AFP Vice Chief of Staff at pinsan din ng Pangulo. Tumahimik na lang muna si Ramos pero hindi nag-atubiling kumilos si Enrile. Sa tingin ni Enrile, maaari siyang ipaligpit ni General Ver para hindi maging hadlang si Enrile sa pag-upo ng First Lady Imelda Marcos bilang Pangulo kung sakaling mamatay si Marcos. Nagbuo si Enrile ng sarili niyang security force na pinamunuan ni Lieutenant Colonel Gregorio Gringo Honasan. Di naglaon, ang grupong ito ang nagpasimuno sa Reform the Armed Forces Movement o RAM. Ang layunin ng RAM ay ituwid umano ang mga katiwalian sa armed forces. Pero may lihim na balak pa ito, ang maglunsad ng kudeta at agawin ang kapangyarihan ni Pangulong Marcos.
So, Tito Jim, 2 years after mapatay si Ninoy Aquino, grabe na pala yung sitwasyon?
And what made things worse was our economic condition. Bagsak na talaga. Inilipat ng malalaking negosyante ang kanilang pera sa ibang bansa. Hindi na rin kinayang bayaran ng gobyerno ang ating mga utang panlabas na lumobo ng $28 billion. Pera na napunta lamang sa bulsa ni Marcos at ng binansagang mga kroni niya.
Kung ganun nakalala yung sitwasyon, bakit hindi patuluyang nag-alsa ang taong bayan?
Kumayambing mo ang revolusyon sa isang prutas. Hindi pa ito hinog. Kinakailangan munang may mangyari pa.
Tulad ng pagpapatawag ni Marcos ng snap elections.
Aba, korek ka dyan. At yan ang huling bahagi ng ating backgrounder to the EDSA Revolution. Noong 1981, Siyam na taon makaraan ideklara ni Marcos ang martial law, nagpadaos siya ng presidential elections laban sa dalawang pipitsuging kandidato. 6 na taon ang dapat niyang termino. Subalit para ipakita sa buong mundo na suportado pa rin siya ng nakararaming Pilipino, at dahil na rin sa pagudyok ng Estados Unidos, ipinasya ni Marcos na tumawag muli ng eleksyon bago pa matapos ang kanyang opisyal na panunungkulan.
Well, I understand the opposition has been asking for an election. In answer to their request, I announce that I am ready to call a snap election, perhaps earlier than 8 months, perhaps in 3 months or less than that.
Pinili ng ilan sa mga makakaliwang grupo na i-boycott ang snap election. Sa kabilang dako naman, napilitang magkaisa ang tinaguriang moderate opposition. Ang kanilang piniling kandidato sa pagkapresidente ay ang byuda ni Ninoy na si Cory Aquino. Si dating Senador Salvador Doy Laurel, na may balak din sanang tumakbo sa pagkapangulo, ay pumayag na maging vice presidential candidate. Ang kanilang naging slogan, sobra na, tama na, palitan na. Naging mainit ang kampanya para sa snap presidential elections na itinakda sa February 7, 1986. Subalit, tiwalang-tiwala si Marcos na siya at ang kanyang vice presidential candidate na si dating Senador Arturo Tolentino ang mananalo. Ipinagyabang ni Marcos na hindi pa siya natatalo sa anumang eleksyon. Hindi akalain ni Marcos na magiging ganoong kalakas ang National Movement for Free Elections, isang organisasyong itinayo para tiyaking patas at malinis ang eleksyon. Sa pamumuno ni Chairperson Jose Concepcion, na ipamalas ng NAMFEL sa pamamagitan ng libu-libong matatapang at dedicated volunteers nito na mahihirapan si Marcos Mandaya. Nagkaroon din ng mga bayani sa loob mismo ng COMELEC. Nag-walk out ang ilang computer programmer nito nang mahalata nila na minamanikulan ng mga opisyal ng COMELEC ang resulta ng bilangan.
Pero Tito, di po ba si Marcos pa rin ang iprinoklaman ng Kongreso bilang nanalong presidente?
Oo nga, pero hindi inakala ni Marcos na may susunod pang mga pangyayari.
Tulad ng pagdaraos nila Cory Aquino ng isang napakalaking rally sa Luneta.
Uy, marami ka nang alam ha. Tama ka dyan. At ang tawag dun ay Tagumpay ng Bayan, kung saan 1 milyong katao ang nag-attend. Hindi lang ito ang nagpakita sa buong mundo na kaduda-duda ang pagkapanalo ni Marcos. Ipinahayag din ng isang US observer team na inimbitahan ni Marcos na sa dami ng katiwalian ng kanilang nasaksihan, naging questionable ang opisyal na resulta ng eleksyon.
We have witnessed and heard disturbing reports of efforts to undermine the integrity of the process, both during the voting and the vote counting process, which is still underway.
But I think these are the most damning comments that I've heard and the most dramatic event that I've witnessed in the course of my being in the Philippines.
Ang ibang bansa ay tumahimik na lamang at nagmasid. Wala ni isa sa kanila, maliban sa Russia, ang nag-congratulate kay Marcos. Ang simbahang Katoliko naman ang nagpahayag ng pinakamatinding pagkondena sa rehimeng Marcos. Ayon sa kanilang pastoral letter, a government that assumes or maintains power through fraudulent means has no moral basis. Para lalong ipakita ng oposisyon ang kanilang pagtutol sa huwad na pagkapanalo ni Marcos, nanawagan si Cory Aquino para sa isang malawakang kampanya ng civil disobedience at pag-boycott ng mga kumpanyang pag-aari ng mga kroni ni Marcos.
I ask you to boycott 7 banks who have helped the usurper perpetuate his hold on power. I ask you to boycott San Miguel products.
Binalak ni Cory na ipakalat ang panawagang ito sa iba't ibang dako ng bansa. Pumunta siya sa Cebu para pamunuan ng isang rally At dito siya inabutan ng mga pangyayari noong February 22, 1986.
Wow, Tito Jim, eto nang pinakahihintay ko.
And I'm sure a lot of our viewers ay sabik na rin. Kaya dyan lang kayo sa aming pagbabalik. Matutunghayan nyo ang mga tunay na pangyayari noong 1986 People Power Revolution.
February 22 to 25, 1986.
Okay, wait, Bianca. First of all, gusto kong malaman mo na hindi lang ako magkikwento, okay? Tulad ng nasabi ko kanina, we'll let people who are actually there tell us what happened as they saw it.
And from their individual stories, we'll get an overall picture of the revolution. Okay yun na. But where do we start, Tito? Dun sa press conference na pinatawag ni Enrile at Ramos sa Camp Aguinaldo on the evening of the 22nd?
Para sa karamihan, diyan nagsimula ang EDSA Revolution. But actually, events had begun to unfold very early that morning.
But the early morning of that Saturday, we were going over the document that would proclaim a revolutionary government. The troops of our tactical group, headed by Greg Honasan, were preparing for an assault on the palace. Then we would fly in to declare a revolutionary government, set up a revolutionary council. Of course, we would assume that Secretary Enrile and then General Ramos would be part of it.
The coup starts with Gringo and about 20 or 25 of his highly trained commandos launching from the Philippine Manufacturing Company plant on the Pasig River. Okay, rubber rafts, blackened faces, black uniforms, blackened guns, you know, and they paddle quietly across the Pasig River, and they land right at Malacanang Palace. And then a member of close-in security, Imelda's close-in security, leads them through the darkness into the presidential bedrooms, and they capture Imelda and Ferdinand Marcos in their night clothes, and they suddenly have the prize, the king and the queen. Okay, at that moment then, 2,000 soldiers from units around Manila rally to the coup, and they come into the palace and they secure it, establishing a perimeter of security. And that is the plan.
So, Tito, ano nangyari sa plano nilang coup?
Naudlot. Kasi nabuking sila ni General Ver. Para maipatupad sana ang kanilang plano, kinailangang mag-recruit ang RAM ng ilang officers ng Presidential Guard Battalion na pinamumunuan ni Erwin, ang anak na koronel ni General Ver. Isa sa mga opisyal na linapitan ng RAM ay si Major Edgardo Doromal.
Later ko lang nalaman na I was the last recruit eh. Kasi nga I'm in charge of the palace grounds. So para magkaroon sila ng access. As presented to me, parang may maging bloody. No? Parang baka magkaroon tayo ng civil war. So ayoko mangyari yun. Tapos yung member ng armed forces maglaban-laban, classmate sa classmate. Ayoko mangyari yun. So ang feeling ko during the time, I should find a way na hindi matuloy yung plano nila. But again, I was told by Gringo na they are serious about it. But since I was in that situation, palagay ko parang pakiramdam ko na trap ako. So I decided na isabihin ko lang kay Colonel Ver.
What would have happened was General Ver had it all planned. He had a counter-coup plan in place. He had mined the banks of the Pasig River with every form of military ordnance possible. He had even 500-pound bombs wired. And what was going to happen is when Gringo started paddling across the river, if they had actually done it, okay, what would happen is searchlights, Navy searchlights, the kind that are on the ships, would have illuminated the entire Pasig River brighter than almost daylight. And a loudspeaker was going to call out, it was going to be the president's son, Bongbong Marcos, would call out, giving him a chance to put up his hands or else. And if they didn't put up their hands right away, they were going to detonate, and the Pasig would have been blown right out of his banks, and the Ram boys would have been atomized.
We were just stumped from that morning up to the evening. It's like, oh my God, this is really gonna be a big crunch.
Punta si Enrile sa Camp Aguinaldo at paano naman napasama si General Ramos doon?
Well, Enrile and the Ram had to change their plans in a hurry.
We just decided that morning to come back to Camp Aguinaldo. So, okay, let's make our stand here. So that was the great idea that popped out. Of course, General Ramos was in this thing since way back because his boys were part of the tactical group.
Well, ang role ko, ang binili ni Colonel Honasan sa akin, whatever happened dun sa araw na itatakda, I should make sure na si General Ramos, who was then the Chief PC and the Vice Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, should be with Minister Enrile. But at that time, naghiwalay na rin kami ni General Ramos. In the afternoon, he had to go back to Alabang sa kanyang residence because nandoon yung kanyang mga neighbors na who were demonstrating and asking why up to that date, hindi pa siya sumasanib o sumasali dun sa mga anti-Marcos group. So I had to go to Alabang and fetch him.
Let me point out, Bianca, na yung press conference ni Ramos at Enrile ay hindi na-cover live sa TV. Remember, nakontrolado ni Marcos lahat ng malalaking TV stations. Kaya sa radyo unang na-broadcast ang mga pangyayaring yun sa Camp Aguinaldo. At ang estasyong pinakaprominenteng nag-cover nito ay ang Radio Veritas.
Talagang kapansin-pansin nga, yung contrast kay Enrile at kay Ramos. Si Ramos, napaka-cool, nakatabako lang gano'n, malumanay magsalita. Si Enrile, talagang makikita mo yung tension sa kanyang mukha. Si Ramos naka-bush jacket lang, pero si Enrile ang kapal ng jacket dahil merong bulletproof sa loob. Nung pagbalik namin nung gabi, kasama ko na nun si June Tanya at dala na namin yung aming outside broadcast van. No? Natatandaan ko noon, marami ng mga opisyal ng militar na nakapanayan kami at willing na sila maglahad ng kanilang suporta doon sa mga rebel soldiers.
And as we shall see sa mga sumunod na oras at araw, lumaki ang papel ng Radio Veritas sa EDSA Revolution.
Dumating kami sa Villa San Miguel mga bandang 6:30 ng hapon at nandun na sa Radio Veritas. Honestly, sabi ng Cardinal, baka naman ito ay laro na naman ni Marcos. So, hintayin natin.
In my own region, I know that we cheated the election to the extent of 350,000 votes.
Nung marinig niya si Secretary Enrile na nagsasabi na dinaya ni Marcos ang eleksyon at siya ay nandaya on behalf of Marcos. In other words, sabi niya, iba yata ito. So, sabi niya sa akin, tawagan mo ang lahat ng monasteries. Utusan mo lahat ng madre. I-expose ang Blessed Sacrament at magpa-fasting sila because we have to make a decision for the country and for the church. At pagkatapos noon, ay tumawag na rin sa kanya mismo si Secretary Enrile at sinabi, Cardinal, we will die. Sabi ng Cardinal sa kanya, I will pray for you at do not be afraid, God will take care of all of us. Yun ang natatandaan kong sinabi niya. At pagkatapos nga noon, ay umakyat na sa office at sa kanya ako sinabihan na, you call Radio Veritas.
Minister Enrile and those with him have appealed for food and expressions of support. Those of you who wish to help should do so.
Alam mo, Tito Jim, I was just wondering, what would have happened kung hindi nanawagan si Cardinal Sin?
Mahirap nang mag-speculate. Well, what I know is, nang dahil sa panawagan na yun ng Kardinal, Marami ang tulad ko na hindi na nagduda kina Enrile at Ramos.
At that point, we were not quite sure because those two people were very much connected with Marcos. But as the night wore on, and then I think Cardinal Sin issued his plea, then we were saying, this is for real, we go. So we packed sandwiches, and then we had, thermos. We filled the thermos with coffee and all the rest. It was like going on a picnic, but at the same time, we were like, are we going to be dead tomorrow? Or tonight?
So at this point, padami na ng padami yung mga tao sa EDSA?
At nadagdagan pa nga ito nang manawagan din sa Radio Veritas si Butch Aquino.
Baka lusubin sila at baka magkaroon ng madugong pangyayari dito. Kaya nga ako'y nanawagan na sa mga kasama ko sa Atom na magkita-kita kami sa Cubao.
Pero ang katakataka, lalong-lalo na para sa mga taga-ibang bansa, parang hindi nagre-revolusyon ng mga tao. It seemed like Filipinos were going to EDSA to have a fiesta.
Ako naman, ang pinagtataka ko, Tito Jim, bakit hindi agad nilusob ng mga puwersa nila Marcos at General Ver ang Camp Aguinaldo?
Yan din ang tanong ng mga sundalong nasa loob ng Camp Aguinaldo.
Sa mind ni General Ver, ang first was to defend Malacanang. So, the first night they spent reinforcing Malacanang. That gave the rebels, that gave us time to consolidate also and strengthen our position. Dahil, uulitin ko, yung pagdidefensa ng Aguinaldo at ng Crame was never our plan. But si General Ramos had another idea. He wanted to go back to Crame. Initially namin dito, C-60 lang kami. Tapos maghahati pa kami. Well, one of the things he said was that yung lines of communication ng constabulary ay dapat magamit. And true enough, pagbalik namin dito, ang unang was yung we established a telephone brigade. No? Even yung duty driver, yung duty security niya, yung aming janitor dun sa opisina, we're manning the telephones at kung sino-sino mga tinatawagan. We were trying to find out ilan ba ang puwersang nasa amin.
Ito na nga, Bianca. Di ba sinabi ko kanina na ang revolusyon ay parang isang prutas? Well, ng mga oras na yun, nahinog na ito. Kinailangan na lang itong malaglag.
So anong ginawa ni Marcos?
Well, he also went on TV at gumawa ng sarili niyang press conference. Iprinisenta ni Marcos ang ilang military officer na sinabi niyang kasangkot sa tangkang pag-agaw ng kapangyarihan. Idinitalya ng mga ito ang tangkang paglusob ng RAM sa Malacanang.
I, Major Saulito Arumin, O-6739 of the Philippine Army, wish to confess my participation in the plan to attack Malacanang Palace and its environs and capture President Marcos after midnight tonight. The leader of this plot is Colonel Greg Unasan, Chief of the MND Security Force.
Tuluyan namang pinabulaanan ni Enrile ang mga pahayag ni Marcos.
Anyway, sir, you have no knowledge about a supposed plot to enter Malacanang?
None whatsoever.
So you did not plot to enter Malacanang, stage a coup d'etat, or assassinate the president
Who,
or
me?
members of his family? Yeah.
Why should I do that?
So Tito, sa halip na magputukan ng baril, naglaban yung dalawang panig sa media?
Precisely. At dito natin makikita kung gaano ka-importante ang media noong 1986 revolution na kailangan malaman muna ng tao kung anong nangyayari bago sila kumilos.
Yes, generally it was a battle for popular and sectoral support. It was a battle for support of forces that were in the middle, that were still fence-sitting. And it was waged that way. It's like a card game. There was a lot of bluffing.
So in other words, Tito, it came down to a question of credibility. Kung sino ba talaga ang higit na pinaniniwalaan ng mga tao?
That's right. And what's ironic is that although, as it turns out, Marcos was telling the truth, sira ng kanyang kredibilidad dahil sa paulit-ulit na pagsisinungaling niya noong nakaraan.
That is quite clear. In spite of any result of any constitutional convention, I have no intention of running for a third term. Don't you think that 2 terms is enough for any man.
So, galit na galit siguro si Marcos sa Radio Veritas.
Talaga. Kaya ilang beses niyang inutos na sirain ang mga transmitter nito.
Paano naman yung mga Amerikano, Tito Jim? How concerned were they sa mga pangyayari?
As a matter of fact, bago magtanghali ng araw na yon, umalis pabalik ng US si Philip Habib. Isang special envoy na ipinadala ni US President Ronald Reagan para alamin ang sitwasyon dito makaraan ng snap elections. Isang linggo na si Habib sa Pilipinas bago nag-breakaway sina Enrile at Ramos.
As Ambassador Habib left Manila and I was accompanying him, there was a feeling of tremendous uncertainty. No one knew how things were going to turn out.
Quite frankly, Washington couldn't think of what to do. We couldn't decide what policy it wanted to pursue. So Habib came essentially to gain time. Clearly, Reagan was not then prepared to cut Marcos out, cut him off.
Tito, hindi pa ba naging obvious kay President Reagan na nandaya si Marcos at ayaw na sa kanya ng taong bayan?
Well, maaring may kutob na siya na ganun na nga ang sitwasyon. Pero, dapat mong malaman na matagal nang kaibigan ng mga Marcos si Reagan at ang kanyang First Lady na si Nancy. So, ayaw ni na Reagan na basta na lang putulin ang kanilang pagsuporta kina Marcos.
Ganon? Si Cory Aquino naman, wala po siya rito sa Maynila ng mga oras na yan, di ba?
Teka lang, Bianca. Malalaman din natin mamaya kung ano ang naging kalagayan ni Cory. Sa susunod na bahagi ng ating programa, ang mga madramang pangyayari sa ikalawang araw ng 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution.
Kaya wag po kayong aalis. Nasa pangalawang araw na tayo, Tito Jim. Paano po ito nagsimula?
Tulad ng nakita natin kanina, both sides are already preparing their next moves. Even though the rebels were still on the defensive, paunti-unti nang nadagdagan ang kanilang puwersa.
Well, I had a ringside seat kasi kasama ko yung dad ko from the very first day onward when he was really the sole, I guess, negotiator for the Cory camp. The scene at Ramos's office was, nasa telepono siya. The whole time, nasa telepono siya. Nagtatabako. So he was smoking, may tatawagin siya. Ang karamihan ng kinakausap niya, he was talking to them in Ilocano kasi mga provincial commanders yun eh. And he was rallying support. At one point, I went into his inner office, which was really his desk, no? And I fell asleep. Paggising ko ng ganun, puro boots ang nasa paligid ko because I was sleeping on the floor under Ramos's desk. And I saw all boots. I looked up, it was all soldiers na. The office had become full of people overnight. Ang problema, yung Navy, which of course included the Marines, no, and yung Air Force. Because the Air Force could come and blow them up at any moment, no, and it wasn't sure where they stood.
Nang umaga din yun, nagpasya sina Enrile at Honasan na tumawid ng EDSA mula Camp Aguinaldo papuntang Camp Crame para ipagsanib ang kanilang puwersa sa mga tropa ni General Ramos.
For me, that was the most important part of EDSA. It's the first time I saw waves of people in the streets, and if you experience it, it's really very eerie. It's very intimidating to see 1 million people.
That was the first time na yung naramdaman kong tanggap ako ng tao. Because at that time, sinusuka na ng tao yung sundalo because of abuses sa martial law. Pero doon, ayakap ka ng tao, pinoprotektahan ka.
Samantala, naghanda namang umatake ang mga puwersa ni Marcos. Si General Josephus Ramas, commander ng Army ang inatasan ni General Ver na mamuno sa tropang ito. Ang Philippine Marines na nasa ilalim ni General Artemio Tajar ang pinili naman ni Ramas para mangunang umatake sa mga rebelde.
Ang plano is to attack Camp Aguinaldo with 2 Marine battalions to be headed by Brigadier General Tajar. So the jump-off that was agreed was 2 p.m. of Sunday.
If you could imagine, our head units were at Guadalupe at the time, and along EDSA up to the entrance of Global City now, along McKinley Road. That is how long our convoy then.
Grabe, kayang-kaya palang durugin ng mga sundalo ni Marcos yung mga rebelde.
Definitely. At gustong ipakita ni Marcos na hawak pa rin niya ang overwhelming military force. Nang tanghaling iyon, lumabas ulit siya sa TV kasama ang ilang matataas na opisyal ng militar. But Marcos and his generals were about to realize that military might alone would no longer be enough to stop the rebellion.
So at 4 o'clock, I told General Ramos, there's something wrong, no? Because the column was not moving as we expected. Dapat, by this time, 4 o'clock, nandoon na sila sa Capaginado. So, kumuha na naman ako ng isang helicopter. So, yung mag-take off na yung helicopter, papuntang doon sa papuntang Ortigas, puno na yung EDSA. So, what I did was move towards the two Marine battalions that at that time nakita ko sa itaas talagang pinaligiran ng tao. So I told the pilot, you land. So approach kami. Nag-land kami sa empty space doon. So nag-ulti ka, pag-land ng helicopter, sisigawan na ako ng mga tao, Kore, Kore. Tumatingin si Jaldajar. Siyempre, general lang, colonel pa lang ako noon. So I saluted. Sir, sabi ko, medyo nahinto ka rito. Oo nga, tawag niya sa akin, boy. Boy, kasi maraming tao, hindi magagalaw, ganyan. Biniro ko. So sabi ko, lalagay ng mga tangke mo. So, yung Corinthian subdivision, sabi ko, banggain mo yan. Lusot ka doon sa kapag ginalaw. Sabi ko, okay, I'll try my best. I did not argue with him. But I saw the General Tadjar was not willing anymore to do what was expected of him.
Talaga ako sa mga tao na pinigilan nila yung mga tangke.
At hindi lang basta tao, Bianca. They were Filipinos, like you and me. People from different walks of life were willing to die for a cause they believed in. Dito nakita ni Marcos at ng buong mundo kung gaano talaga kalakas ang people power.
We were there to block tanks and we were there to stage a revolution. It was not a protest. It was revolution for us.
It was like putting your money where your mouth is. No, yung bang, this is it. You back down or you back out, you miss the chance to do something for your country.
That's when, again, the plans of Malacanang were foiled because they could not imagine how to deal a tactical blow to a group that was really insulated by such a huge mass of people.
What came into my mind is that, rightly or wrongly, at that time, because of the crowd that I saw, that the majority of the Filipino people do not like Marcos anymore as president.
Para sa akin, Tito Jim, yung pinaka nag-represent ng people power ay yung litrato ng dalawang madre na nagdarasal sa harap ng tangke. Ano kayang pakiramdam nila ng mga panahon na yon?
Eto, pakinggan natin ang kanilang kwento.
Yung mga madre, kanya-kanyang lakad. Kaming dalawa ni Pingping ang magkasama. So, may hinila kami ng isang mama.
Sabi niya, sister, huwag kayong alis kasi nandito pa yung mga tangke.
Nahanap ko yung ibang madre kung nasaan, kami lang dalawa. Sabi ko, ano yung gagawin namin? Sabi niya, sister, magdasal tayo, magdasal. So nagdasal kami. Mamaya hindi pa sila nakontento. Sabi nila, sister, pumunta kayo doon sa ang top ng tangke. Doon kami magdasal sa ano. Ang taas naman ng tangke, sabi naman namin. Dito na lang sa ibaba.
Before kami nakatapos dyan sa Rosary, mayroong ray of light talaga. Ayaw ko kung saan yung galing yung ray of light na yun. Wala namang init. May makulimlim lang ba? Tapos yung ray of light, parang nag-strike sa amin at saka sa sundalo.
Naroon si Bruce Aquino. Kung makikita niyo sa picture, naroon siya sa back namin. Kinausap niya si Tadja, sabi niya, are you still going to look at these people? These people are armless and these people are barricading. Parang sinasabi niya na, ang mga tao ayaw na kayo pupunta dun sa Logistico Man. Si Tadjar, continuous yung kanya smoking. Talagang kita mo yung tension sa kanya na pati mga sundalo niya wala nang kainik-inik.
Ang presence of mind ko doon sa Blessed Sacrament, sabi ko, hindi itong tangke, Lord, hindi yung tangke hinaharap ko, hindi ito, ikaw nandyan sa Blessed Sacrament.
Mamaya, nung matapos na yung rosary, umaandar na yung tangke. Sa bagay, bago naman kami talaga nagpunta doon, nag-general confession na kami. Kung ano man ang mangyari, parang that time, yung love of country ay malakas. Kasi kita mo rin ang dami ng tao, daming tao. Para mabigyan ka rin ba ng courage na, I'm not alone, I'm a Filipino, I'm one with them.
Ay, sabi ko, yung that time din, sabi ko ni Jesus nga, Jesus, yung kamay mo, hipuin mo naman yung mga puso nila. Oo, kasi wala kami magagawa. Wala naman kami mga armas. Yung armas ito lang rosary.
Yung mga nag-interview, sabi ni Tadja, nasa isip na niyang padaanan talaga ang mga tao. Pero nakita niya yung dalawang madre yung nagdadasal. And that, sabi niya sa interview, that changed his decision. Sabi niya, to stop the tank.
Nako, Tito, kung ako sigurong nandun, hindi ko nakayanan yung ginawa ni Sister Terry at Sister Ping. Kayo po?
We were in Radio Veritas, keeping vigil. Kasi, kahit na winasak ng mga puwersa ni General Ver ang main transmitters ng Radio Veritas, it was still able to continue broadcasting using a small standby transmitter. That's why naroon kami para bantayan ito. Kaya lang, it eventually gave out towards the evening of that day. But we're getting ahead of the story. Kanina, tinanong mo kung anong nangyari kay Cory Aquino, di ba? Tulad nga ng nakita natin, Cory had gone to Cebu to rally people for her civil disobedience campaign. Nang malaman niya ang tungkol sa nangyari sa Camp Aguinaldo, tinawagan niya si Minister Enrile para sabihing ipagdarasal niya ito. Pagkatapos, tumuloy siya sa isang kumbento ng mga madre where she spent the night. Kinabukasan, sa isang press conference, nanawagan siya kay Pangulong Marcos.
For the sake of the Filipino people, I ask Mr. Marcos to step down now so that we can have a peaceful transition of government.
Pagkatapos ng press conference na yon, bumalik si Cory Aquino sa Manila lula ng isang pribadong eroplano. Sa isang kakatuwang pangyayari, nang papunta na siya sa bahay ng kanyang kapatid, sakay ng isang tinted na kotse, nakasabay niya yung mga tangke at truck ng mga sundalong lulusob sana sa kampo ng mga rebelde.
So, Tito, meron pa bang naganap noong araw na yon?
Well, kahit napaatras ng people power ang mga puwersa ni Marcos, hindi pa rin sila nasiraan ng loob. Itinuloy nila ang planong sakupin ang Camp Aguinaldo at Camp Crame. Yan po at ang iba pang sumunod na mga pangyayari ang tutunghayan natin sa aming pagbabalik.
Tito, kanina sinabi mo na pansamantalang na off the air ang Radio Veritas. Paano at kailan po ito nakapag-broadcast ulit?
Sa tulong ng isang Jesuita na si Father James Reuter, nakahanap ng kapalit na radio station ang Radio Veritas. Muli itong bumalik sa ere lampas ng hating gabi ng February 23. Kaya lang, tinawag na itong Radyo Bandido.
Yung studio nila was sa Santa Mesa. 10 floors and then a tower. Kung i-raid kami, the only way we'd escape was to go down the spiral staircase from the tower and then jump to the next building on the 10th floor. The spiral staircase that I described, punong-puno ng mga madre na grocery. I always get asked the question, was I scared? You were 12 years old, ganon-ganon. Hindi eh. Hindi kami takot nun at all dahil number one, Kung i-raid ka ng military tapos 12 years old ka, medyo exciting pa yon. Number 2, and I really thought this at that time, kung mamatay ako ng 12 years old, okay lang. Sa loob ng booth, meron kaming VHF radio. Ako yung traffic. We would relay the messages to June Keithley for her to broadcast. Because we had a team of other actors. One team in Krame. One team sa labas kung saan nag-tear gas.
Sa mga sandaling yun, naging matunog ang balita na muling lulusob ang mga tropang sundalong pinadala ni General Der. Ang plano umano ay dadaan ng mga ito sa may libis, patungo sa Santolang Gate ng Camp Aguinaldo. Kahit nanawagan ng radyo bandido sa mga tao na pumunta sila sa kanto ng libis at Santolan, kakaunti lang ang mga nagsipunta roon. Muli, ang pumweso sa harapan ng barikada ay mga madre kasama ang ilang pari at seminarista.
We were asked by our superior na, ano na nga yun, sabi na, are you ready to die? Are you ready to die?
And you know, behind me, there was an old lady with her family, and sabi nung one of the young men, sabi sa old lady, Lola, umuwi na kayo, sabi. Baka may patayan pa rito. Ang sabi ng Lola sa kanya, bakit? Are you the only one who has a right to die for his country?
That evening, we were prepared. We just, meron kaming mga, nag-nap lang kami ng sandali. And then after, gising na naman, dasal na naman, ganyan. So yun ang usual na ginagawa namin that evening.
Then at 4 o'clock, then I think the priest, Father Arebroho, asked na, okay, you wake up and we'll pray the Our Father, holding hands. So we prayed the Our Father. And in the middle of the prayer, I saw a cloud, white cloud. Ay, yung pala, tear gas na pala yun.
Sabi ng instruction sa akin, dapa. So, pag sabi dapa din kami, but we continue to pray even nakadapa kami. So, ang prayer ko earlier, talagang mas doble pa ang prayer ko. Kung ano-anong santo na lang na itawag ko.
O tapos nung matagal-tagal na, very silent. Sabi ko, bakit very silent? Pagtingin ko, dalawa na lang kami sa linya namin. Wala na lahat yung mga lalaki doon.
Tinitingnan ko, parang gusto kong maano-ano tanong ang itsura ng tirgas. Pero mamaya, yung bumabagsak na dyan sa sabay yung pag nakita ko na, nagaganyan ako, sabay-sabay. Ano ko na yung bumabagsak talaga sa may forehead ko. Sabi ko, ni-imagine, sabi ko, siguro duguan na ako, ganyan. Pero, ang wonder ko doon, natapos yung katitirgas, that was, I think, sabi ko, this is a miracle kasi wala ni isang nitilapsik man lang, wala akong sugat.
I remember one old sister holding a rosary like this. And the soldiers would just pushed her aside and went over.
So we started removing the barricades that were put by them, and then we went to Camp Aguinaldo.
So paano na yan, Tito Jim? Nakapasok na yung mga Marines sa Camp Aguinaldo.
Oo nga. Pero naging hulog pa rin ng langit ang pag-broadcast ng mga pangyayaring yun sa radyo.
Bakit, Tito?
Kasi nung mga sandaling yun, habang idinidisperse ng mga sundalo yung mga madre at pari, may nakikinig na isang colonel ng Philippine Air Force whom practically no one had heard of.
My first thought was, I spoke with my wife. And I said, I think I'm going to help these people. And I gathered my pilots in the briefing room. And I said, the situation is this. And I said, it is a great honor to die for one's country. I said, now is the opportunity. If you want to join me, I said, stay. Those who want to leave, leave your rifle and go. To my surprise, these people came to me and admitted they were part of the coup. And I said, oh my goodness.
We thought, eto na yung umpisa ng attack. No? So, in that office of General Ramos, merong isang pare nagbigay na nung last sacrament, yung extreme unction. No? And I recall yung driver ni General Ramos katabi ko, he was crying. No, siguro sa isip niya, naisip ko rin, ito na yung last hour namin.
we landed, I was met by a throng of newsmen. They were surprised that we landed. They were asking, the first thing they asked was, where did I come from? Because these newsmen were completely surprised.
But all of a sudden, biglang nagsigawan yung because the late Colonel Patalinghug came barging in and saying that bumaliktad na si Colonel Sotelo. And the Philippine Air Force helicopters are with us.
And of course, when I went to see General Ramos and Secretary Enrile, I could see that they were quite relieved. Of course, General Ramos and Secretary Enrile never really know who I was, because I was just a very insignificant figure in the armed forces. I was just one of the colonels there. But of course, I was holding a key unit in the psychological warfare department. To have all of these, to have these helicopters on your side was a great advantage. Aside from the helicopters, the naval units under Captain Hardiniano also spoke up and said they were on the side of the rebels.
At pagkatapos nga noon, sunod-sunod nang bumaliktad ang iba pang mga unit ng armed forces at pumanig na sa mga rebelde.
Tito, gano'n na lamang siguro ang tuwa ng mga tao sa EDSA.
Sobrang tuwa. Lalo na nang kumalat ang balita na umalis na raw sa Malacanang si Marcos at ang kanyang pamilya.
Got a long-distance telephone advice, no? Yes. That President Marcos or ex-President Marcos was seen in Andersen Air Force Base in Guam. And there is now a TV news on Guam that Marcos is in Guam.
We were joyous and we were shouting and everybody was passing around food and hugging. Oh, there were a lot of hugs and people, you were talking to people that you did not know and they were like family to you.
Ganon kadali?
Well, not quite. It turned out hindi pa pala oras ng pagdiriwang. Sa gitna ng nag-uumapaw na saya, marami ang nasyak nang biglang lumabas sa TV si Marcos.
All I would like to ask is that the civilians stay in their houses because we have been...
The Air Force is ready to mount an air attack. We request the civilians to leave the vicinity of Camp Kramet immediately, Mr. President. That's why I come here with your orders, so we can immediately strike them. We have to mobilize the helicopters that they got. We have 2 fighter planes flying now to strike at any time. So with your order, sir,
my order is
that all
not
civilians
to
leave the area.
attack. No, you hold on. You're not to attack.
Sir, we are left with no option but to...
Marami ang hindi naniwala sa dramang ito ni Marcos at Ver. Sa totoo lang, na mga sandaling yun, handa na mga tropa ni Marcos na nakapasok sa Camp Aguinaldo na bombahin ang Camp Crame.
7:30 in the morning, my troops were already positioned inside the Camp Aguinaldo. 1 battalion was occupying the officers' area, while the other battalion was occupying the Aguinaldo Golf Club. And our machine guns and mortars were already in place.
Pero ang mga sumunod na pangyayari ay taliwas sa inaasahan ni Marcos at General Ver.
The first order came at around 9 o'clock in the morning from General Ramos. And the order came like this: Balbas, I want you to fire your cannons and your report for compliance. I did not say no, I said yes, sir, but in my mind it was always there that I should disobey unlawful order. So was trying to find out a way by which I could get out of that tight situation. So I told him that I'm still positioning my cannons, my mortars, and the troops, although they'd been positioned long time ago. The second order came in again after around 10 to 15 minutes. He told me, which came in like this. Balbas, have you already complied with my order? I told him that this was another alibi for a commander.
Habang patuloy ang delaying tactics ni Colonel Balbas, the rebels decided to go on the offensive for the first time since the start of the revolution.
About 10 o'clock, one of my boys fired some rockets in Malacanang just to let them know that the other side had the weapons and they were willing to use it. And then at about 12 o'clock, we heard that they were planning to come and destroy our helicopters in Karame. So I had 3 of the gunships take off and destroyed the Hueys on the ground in Villamor.
So when the third order came, I started looking for General Tadjar through our network. Was able to locate him at Malacanang Park. Sabi ko sa kanya, I could not fire at Camp Crame simply because there are lots of people that are inside Camp Crame. These are innocent people. I recommended to him that we should move back to Fort Bonifacio, which he has acceded.
Hindi lang kontrol ng kanyang mga sundalo ang unti-unting nawala kay Marcos. Habang ipinapalabas ang kanyang press conference sa government TV station, bigla itong naputol sa ere. Na-take over na pala ng isang rebeldeng tropa ang Channel 4 na dating pag-aari ng ABS-CBN.
Biglang nagkaroon ng media power ang mga rebelde.
Di pa agad-agad because there was still one problem. Paano nila patatakbuhin muli ang Channel 4?
Even long before that, we always thought of how we as the broadcast people could help in our own way to unseat the Marcos regime. Pumasok na kami, yung grupo ko, sila Jimmy Navarro, si Badong Castillo, si Princesito Pascual. Pumasok kami. Wala na yung stasyon. Off the air na yung stasyon. Yung lumala akong ganyan, talagang kinakabahan ako, katakot-takot ang kabaho. Kasi karirinig mo lang ng putok eh. Nagkataon naman, may lumabas na isang engineer. Tinawag ko, nakilala naman kaagad ako. Kinausap ko siya, sabi ko, nasaan yung mga iba? Kinento niya sa akin na, nandyan lang ho, nakatago lahat-lahat. Takot, natatakot. Yung labanan nga. Tinawag ko, sabi ko, tawagin mo lahat-lahat dyan. Sabihin mo, pinatatawag sila ni Jake Lopez. At sabihin mo sa kanila, walang recrimination, walang gantihan, walang basta, ang gagawin lang natin, we will put the station on the air. Meron dumating na grupo galing sa Radio Veritas, si Orly Punsalan. Yung yumao na Orly Punsalan. If I'm not mistaken, it must have been about 1 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday. We went on the air and we asked Orly to be the one to announce.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Channel 4 is on the air again to serve the people.
Kasama po kayo dun sa mga unang telecast, di ba, Tito?
Tama. Ang daming artista at production staff na dating mga taga-ABS ang nag-volunteer ng kanilang services. Sarap talaga ng feeling.
Ngayon lang po ang pagkakataon. Ayan. Gagawin ko rin. Napakasarap! Sobra na! Tama na! Pahinga na!
So, Tito, tuloy-tuloy na siguro yung kasiyahan ng mga nagrevolusyon laban kay Marcos.
Well, the initiative had definitely shifted to the side of the rebels. Pero, kamakailan lang natin nalaman na meron pa palang huling plano ang mga nalalabing puwersa ni General Ver. And they were supposed to carry this out during the evening hours of that same day.
That was a massive mortar attack on Camp Crame. At that time, the attacking element will be commanded by Colonel Eugenio Reyes of the Philippine Marines, who was my classmate in PNA. Herein, I can see that wala na rin siya. He does not have the heart to continue. So we understood that we were not going to do it. Bigla na lang tinawag ko ni Jal Ramas. Oh, the First Lady wants to talk to you. So, good evening, ma'am. Oh, Colonel, ganyan. Ma'am, hindi talaga pwede ito. Gagawin na ito, ganyan, maraming mamatay, kapwa Pilipino natin. So, maybe it's God's hand is directing all of us here. We are not going to do it, and we are not going to shed blood.
By this time, the United States had also already made up its mind about Marcos. Nagpalabas ito ng isang statement na binasa ni White House spokesperson Larry Speaks.
Attempts to prolong the life of the present regime by violence are futile. A solution to this crisis can only be achieved through a peaceful transition to a new government.
Anong new government yon, Tito Jim?
Nang makita ni na Enrile at Ramos na sinusuportahan ng gusto ng taong bayan si Cory, kinausap ng dalawa ang byuda ni Ninoy para magbuo na ng transition government. Kaya lang, ang gusto ng militar ay gawin ang inauguration ni Cory sa loob ng kampo nila para umano'y maging lubos ang kanyang seguridad. Hindi pumayag si Cory.
Eh di sinong nasunod?
Yan at iba pang naganap ang malalaman natin sa susunod na bahagi ng ating programa.
Kaya dyan lang po kayo dahil kami magbabalik. So, Tito Jim, nasa huling araw na tayo ng 4-day 1986 EDSA Revolution.
Tama. Sa araw na ito, narinig ni Marcos ang pinakamapait na balita sa loob ng 4 na araw na yun.
Galing kanino, Tito?
Makaraang maglabas ng statement ng White House calling for a peaceful transition to a new government, pilit na sinubukan ni na Marcos at unang ginang Imelda na kausapin mismo si President Reagan at ang kanyang asawang si Nancy. Gusto nilang malaman kung talaga nga ba galing kay Reagan ang pahayag na yun ni Speaks.
Nakakonect ba sina Marcos kina Reagan?
Yun ang hindi nangyari. Pinigilan ng malalapit na advisor ni Reagan na makausap pa siya ni Marcos. Sa halip, ang kumausap kay Marcos sa isang matalik at pinagkakatiwalaang kaibigan ni President Reagan, si Senator Paul Laxalt. Mula kay Laxalt, narinig ni Marcos ang di niya sukat akalaing kayang gawin sa kanya ng Estados Unidos.
I said, Mr. President, I'm not bound by diplomatic restraints. So I'm talking only for myself. But I think you should cut cleanly. I think the time has come. And there was the longest pause on the other end of that phone. It seemed to last minutes. And he finally, I said, Mr. President, are you still there? And finally he came on and he says, yes, I'm here, Senator. He says, I'm so very, very disappointed.
Bagamat gumuho na ang kanyang mundo, balak pa rin ituloy ni Marcos ang kanyang inauguration bilang inihalal na pangulo ng snap elections.
Eh di pa paano yun, Tito Jim? Di po ba may plano ding i-inaugurate si Cory Aquino bilang presidente?
Yes, pero naunahan niya si Marcos ng kalahating oras.
So where was Cory's inauguration finally held?
Sa Club Filipino, katabi ng Green Hill Shopping Center.
I was there when she took her oath of office, and if I remember rightly, it was Teddy Boy Locsin who wrote the words of the oath or whatever else on a napkin and either gave it to her or gave it to the person beside her to dictate to her as she took the oath of office.
I, Corazon Cojuangco Aquino, do solemnly swear
Sa Malacanang naman, handa na rin ang lahat para sa inauguration ni Marcos.
It was a typical inauguration except that those of us who were overly optimistic, we were oblivious of what was happening on the other side of the fence, meaning at Club Filipino. While those of us who were less optimistic, maybe they knew more than we did, you could feel it that they were quite edgy. The oath-taking was delayed because obviously we were waiting for Vice President Arturo, and he didn't make it. And I think his failure to take his oath was something critical in the sense that my personal belief was that if Vice President Tolentino was able to take his oath, then things would be different.
Ang inauguration ni Marcos ay pinakitang live sa Channel 9 na nooy nasa kamay pa ng mga tauhan niya. Subalit bago pa man napasumpa si Marcos ni Supreme Court Chief Justice Ramon Aquino,
all of a sudden, poof, we disappeared on the air.
We have had some technical problems, so...
Binaril na pala ng mga rebelde sundalo ang transmission tower ng Channel 9. Itinuloy ni Marcos ang seremonya at pagkatapos nagpakita siya kasama ng kanyang pamilya sa mga natitira pa nilang taga-suporta. Walang kamalay-malay mga tinaguriang Marcos loyalists na nagdesisyon na palang umalis sa Malacanang ang kanilang Pangulo at ang kanyang pamilya.
And I did not even bother to ask saan sila pupunta because up to the time I left Malacanang and before I read the papers the following morning or heard over radio, it was my impression that they were going to Hawaii, to Poway.
And in the end, I think he was convinced by me and by a number of other people, some calling from the States, etc., that he owed it to his grandchildren and his children to leave. So I offered him 3 options. I said, you can, if the streets are clear, we will bring you out by car and to the airport and fly you out. Or we will send a boat up the Pasig River and bring you out. Or we will send helicopters in and bring you out. So I turned then to my principal military advisors, the commander at Subic, the commander at Clark, and the head of JUSMAG, General Teddy Allen. And they put together an operational plan within just a couple of hours. And Marcos indicated he wanted to come out by helicopter, but he also wanted to bring some things down the Pasig River by boat. So we set that up, and I said, go ahead, and we did it, and it worked.
My husband and I had misgivings because, you know, the Americans had to come down and bring them out. I mean, like, it was like, oh, no, there they go again. I mean, when are we ever going to do things by ourselves?
First of all, we didn't precipitate the revolution. We didn't mount a coup against Marcos. What I think we did do constructively was try to create some political space in which Filipinos could resolve this problem. And then I think it was right for us, given our past relationship with Marcos, and given our concern about the Philippines, to take him out, to help him get away. And I know Corazon Aquino was very grateful for that. She did not want to have to deal with Marcos in the palace, or Marcos dead, or Marcos taking refuge in Ilocos. When we took him out by helicopter, I had told her in advance we were going to do that, and she approved that.
Tito Jim, nasan po kayo noon nang umalis na ng Malacanang sina Marcos?
I was at Channel 4, and I'll never forget June Keithley making that historic announcement.
It is confirmed Mr. Marcos has left this country. I guess it seems like we waited for this forever. And it certainly took a long time coming. And there have been so many heroes, yes. And we've said this over again all these days.
Nang umalis si Marcos, itinuloy ng taong bayan ang kanilang pagpepiesta sa loob mismo ng Malacanang.
Tito Jim, napaka-dramatic pala ng mga pangyayari. Parang pelikula.
Ganyan din ang tingin ng marami. Pero kung pelikula nga, ang tanong ay, sino ang direktor?
How this thing happened, I cannot explain. I cannot explain. But surprisingly, it's just like a jigsaw puzzle that fitted perfectly.
Yung EDSA 1986 ay palaging tinitingnan ni Cardinal Sin mula sa pananaw ng Marian Year of 1985. Sapagkat noong mga panahong yon, 2 years pagkatapos patayin si Ninoy Aquino, litong-lito ang bayan at wala na talagang mapanghahawakan. Kasabay noon ang 2000th birthday ng Blessed Virgin Mary. At pagkatapos ng closing ng Marian Year ng December 8, pag-uwi namin sa Villa San Miguel, paulit-ulit niyang sinasabi sa akin, you will see, something will happen, something will happen.
When I look at again, it's the miracle of God and the people in prayer.
So, Tito, milagro nga po ba ang nangyari sa EDSA noong 1986?
Pakinggan na lang natin ang isa nating tagakwento.
When we say miracle, we don't mean that somehow God stepped in like that and automatically no. Miracles take place primarily in our hearts. And we are never absolutely sure what the miracle was. Cardinal Sin very often referred to the miracle of EDSA as a miracle happening in hundreds of thousands of hearts.
Well, Bianca, I hope that answers your question.
I think so, Tito. Pero may isa pa akong tanong, na tanong din ng napakaraming kabataan tulad ko. 20 years after, ano bang kabutihan ng naidulot ng EDSA sa mga pangkaraniwang Pilipino?
I knew you were gonna ask that. Sa aming pagbabalik, ang mga sagot sa mga tanong na yan ni Bianca.
Tito Jim, isa yan sa pinaka-paborito kong kanta. Every time I hear it talaga, it makes me feel so good. Kayo po nagsulat niyan, di ba?
Believe it or not, I wrote it only in a matter of minutes. Tulad ng milyong-milyong Pilipino, inspired talaga ako after what happened at EDSA. It really made me proud to be a Filipino. As I wrote in the song, kay sarap pala maging Pilipino. And why not? After what we had done, we were admired by the whole world.
Look what happened in Eastern Europe. All these revolutions that you see that have, colors ascribed to them. Where did all of this start? It started in the Philippines. And I don't know that Filipinos really appreciate that enough.
So, as a way of inspiring a mass movement to overthrow authoritarianism and move us from a dark authoritarian age into our current age, more democratic age, people power was of incredible international significance.
Laban? Pero Tito, 20 years later and after 2 EDSAs, marami pa rin ang nagtatanong, lalong-lalo na kaming kabataan, may pagbabago bang talaga na naidulot sa ating lipunan ang EDSA? How come napakalaki pa rin ang agwat ng mayayaman at mahirap? Nariyan pa rin ang korupsyon at ang political situation natin ay napakagulo.
Ang naging reaction ko sa EDSA Revolution ng 1986. Sumasang-ayon ako sa EDSA Revolution ng 1986. Si Corazon Aquino ang namuno sa EDSA Revolution, kung saan ang mga tao ay tapat na nagtayo sa harapan ng gate ng pamahalaan. Ang People Power Revolution at kilala rin bilang ang EDSA Revolution, Philippine Revolution ng 1986 at Yellow Revolution ay isang serye ng mga sikat na demonstrasyon sa Pilipinas na nagsimula sa 1983 at nagrukrok sa 1986. Ang mga pamaraan na ginamit amounted sa isang napanatiling kampanya ng paglaban sibil laban sa kaharasan, rehimen at electoral pandaraya. Ang kaso ng non-violent revolution ang humantong sa pag-alis ng Pangulo Ferdinand Marcos at ang pagpanumbalik ng demokrasya sa bansa.
Reaction ko sa EDSA People Power noong 1986. Ang People Power ang nagluklok kay Corazon C. Aquino sa pagpakapangulo ng bansa. Sa ilalim ng kanyang pamamahala, muling naitatag ang pamahalaang demokratiko. Maraming pagbabagong nagawa ang dating Pangulong Corazon Aquino. Napataas ang pagsahod sa mga kawani ng pamahalaan. Nabago ang Saligang Batas 1987.
Patubang.
At naitatag ang Presidential Commission on Good Governance or PCGG.
Ang reaction ko sa EDSA Revolution. Ang reaction ko sa EDSA Revolution ay pareho ay bigo sa kamalayan na ang pareho ay hindi nagbago kahit ano. Ito ay ang parehong maruming politika na hanggang ngayon ay dapat nating sagutin dahil sa mga kasalukuyang pampolitikang krisis ay mayroon. Ang EDSA Revolution ay mabuti. Ito ay lamang mahalaga na malaman kung ano ang tunay na revolusyon ay tungkol sa lahat.
Saludo ako sa EDSA Revolution dahil sa sumusunod. Ito ay nakakatulong sa pagbalik ng demokrasya sa ating bansa dahil sa pag-alis ni dating Presidenteng Ferdinand E. Marcos. At saka sa tingin ko naman, dahil naman sa EDSA Revolution, napatunayan ng mga Pilipino sa iba't ibang bansa sa lahat ng sulok ng mundo na ang kahit anong problema ay matugunan kapag tayong lahat ay magkakaisa. Para rin sa akin, okay lang, tapos lang.
Ang reaksyon ko sa EDSA Revolution. Sa lahat ng mga presidente ng Pilipinas noong panahon na, si Marcos lang ang may angking talino na makapagpamuno ng 2 dekada. Isa talaga siyang matalino at dahil sa kanyang angking talino ay marami siyang naitagumpay sa pagtayo ng kaniyang mga proyekto para sa mamayang Pilipino. Kahit unti-unti nang nabaon ang Pilipinas sa utang dahil sa mamayang Pilipino sa pagbabahala ng kanilang mga utang sa mga organisasyong pautang o microfinancing, pambayanang pautang, at lupang pautang na para sa mahihirap na magsasaka na nagreklamo ang mga Pilipino dahil sa mga abusong pantao na ginawa ng mga militar at lalong lumaki ang reklamo ng mga Pilipino na nabalitaan nila sa pagpaslang kay Ninoy Aquino. Marami din sa militar ang pagbiglang pagyaman dahil sa pagmamalabis ng opisyal nito. Lalong lumala ang kaso ng graft and corruption na kung saan nagbigay ng masamang epekto sa mga mamayan na lubhang naghihikahos. Nang sumiklab ang galit ng sambayang Pilipino na nagbigay daan na maganap ang People Power o EDSA Revolution. Kaya sumang-ayon ako sa EDSA Revolution.